Ideal Protein Nation. We are back. We are back from summer vacation. I am rested and rejuvenated and ready to roll. I'm so excited about today's show. This is just going to be an absolutely amazing show, fueled by ketones for sure. So let's get to it. For those of you who are not familiar with the Life Possible podcast, the Life Possible podcast was created to spotlight successful clients, coaches, and clinic owners who have used the Ideal Protein protocol to reset their body, reset their mind, and in most cases, reset what's possible for their lives. These men and women are pursuing goals and dreams they thought were dead and gone. These men and women are pursuing goals and dreams they might not even known they could do or even wanted to. In short, they're living a life we like to refer to as life possible. What is possible after you've taken the Ideal Protein weight loss and metabolic health journey? Who am I and why am I doing this? Well, I tell you what, there's no easy way to put this. Back in 2014, I found myself fat, sick, and depressed. And I didn't understand what had happened to my metabolism, and I didn't see a way out. So I had given up. However, I swear that God brought me the Ideal Protein protocol as the answer to so many of my prayers, both personally and professionally. And by using that protocol, I now live this life possible. I live a life where I feel healthy, vital, and alive. In 2021, I was able to complete my first half Ironman distance triathlon at the age of 54 after 30 years of inactivity. So who do I have for you today? I am super, super excited to bring you Dr. Latt Mansor. Dr. Mansor is the research lead at HVMN, which is Health Via Modern Nutrition. Their flagship product, Ketone IQ, is something that we now have available to you in Ideal Protein Nation through our clinics. We're going to talk today about why we've decided to create the strategic partnership, how Ketone IQ might help you maximize your results for weight loss in phase 1, and how in your lifestyle, when you're building a healthy low-carb lifestyle, you might also use Ketone IQ in very strategic places to increase your athletic performance as well as brain power. So let's get into Dr. Mansor's background because he's very well decorated. Dr. Mansor holds a PhD in physiology, anatomy, and genetics from the University of Oxford, where his research focused on the metabolism of the type 2 diabetic heart in hypoxia. He also holds a master's from Columbia University and a Bachelor of Science from the University of Nottingham in biotechnology. He is a world expert in physiology and metabolism and consults with elite sport, military, clinical, and other research organizations. So, although his education was primarily in health sciences, Dr. Mansor always believed that collaborative efforts between science and business have the potential to create an impact, improving people's lives better than either one does on its own. And that's what brought him to the place that he is today as the research lead at HVMN. So enough. Let's bring him out. Where are you? Latt, where are you? There he is. Hey.
Hi.
How are you, Latt?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for your patience and thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. This is super important. I feel like the partnership that our companies have created required a special show so that we could really introduce it to all of our clients all around North America properly.
No, absolutely. I do feel, the partnership with Ideal Protein is, to me personally, a dream come true, because while it is cool to help athletes win Olympics and win Tour de France, it's different when you help people battle metabolic disease and dysfunction and get better, just because I come from a family with very high prevalence of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And I think for me, just knowing that I'm part of someone's journey to get healthier, get better, it means a lot to me. At the end of the day, I think, this is some of the memories that I'll carry with me for, the rest of my life. So.
That's absolutely amazing. You know, I love the fact that you mentioned the Olympic athletes, et cetera. I had a client come in the office today who was blown away last week when he was watching some of the trials, the Olympic trials that are going on. And he said that he was watching a panel discussion with a couple of athletes and that the Ketone IQ bottles were right there. He recognized it. And he said, oh my gosh, that's Ketone IQ right there.
Yeah. We've got a lot of Olympic athletes as well as the Tour de France that just happened. We have those bikers, those cyclists going on Ketone IQ, both for pre-workout sort of energy supplementation as well as recovery intervention as well.
I love that. I love that. That's so neat. So we're going to do a demonstration first. I want to get this going before we jump back into your personal story, how you got to HVMN and Ketone IQ.
Mm-hmm.
One of the important reasons to use this product is to get someone into a deeper state of ketosis. This is something, again, that I've been using for quite a while. And I also very oftentimes will measure my ketones as well as my blood sugar. And when I love to do experiments, and when a product says that it's supposed to raise my level of ketosis, I say, bring it on. And I'll go ahead and use the Keto Mojo before and after to see that it actually does what it's supposed to do.
Yep.
So I'm going to do that on air today. I saw you and Dr. Casey Means, one of my metabolic idols, do this on your show, and I thought it was just the coolest thing.
Yeah, I mean, what's better way to ensure that your product is doing what it's supposed to do than let the user themselves experience it? And because of the technology that we have these days, it's so easy to confirm whether the product is doing its job. You can measure blood ketone levels. If you're measuring, if you're taking it long term, you can measure some form of cognitive function, some form of physical function, weight loss, your biomarkers, 0.5.
So yeah, we're going to get 0.5 to get started, which I'm super excited about. As we talked about, I was on vacation last week, and I've been doing a little metabolic cleanup so far. And so now we're also going to check that blood sugar. I'm going to say, yeah. All right. Coming in at 92.
There you go.
There we go. So we've got our pre-numbers, and we're going to check this at the end of the show after we've been talking. But in the meantime, I'm going to take my Ketone IQ shot.
Yep. And as I was talking to John before we press the record button, I would do this with him, but except I had my shot. I usually have my shot 15 minutes before a podcast recording. So I don't have a base anymore, base measurement. So
no worries. So you're sharper than me right now, but by the end, I'm going to be sharper than you. Right?
There you go. You don't even have a ketone face. You know the ketone face? You know what I'm talking about?
So I want you to address that, Latt, and I love the way that you did it during when we had the introductory webinar about the flavor. How do you describe it?
It tastes like it works.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And I've said that to every one of my clients as I'm talking to them about that. It tastes like it works.
Yeah, but do stay tuned because we are coming up with some improved new flavors in the third quarter of this year. So that will be I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. All right. So let's get back. I want to hear a little bit about your story and your background. I just read a long introduction for you. And as we talked about before, I actually did press the record button, that you are the most decorated expert in the ketogenic metabolic health field that I have had on the show to date. So I once again, thank you for doing this. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Latt Mansor. Oh, God. And there are slides of me when I was overweight. So I was born in Malaysia. I grew up in Malaysia. I grew up overweight in a family with a high prevalence of obesity and diabetes, especially on my mom's side. My late dad actually passed away when I was 17 from stroke. And then a few years
Oh my
prior to that,
God.
he had a heart attack and had an open heart surgery. So the odds on were not very, very good on my genetic side. But I thought I would just be like my parents, I'll be my relatives, because
Yep.
I was already heavier on the heavier side. And looking at the adults, growing up, I was like, well, that's who I'm gonna be. Until I went to the UK and did my undergraduate in biotechnology, where I learned more about physiology and metabolism. And then I took a final year project for my undergraduate thesis, which was a metabolism of adipose tissue, so fat
Mhm.
tissue metabolism. And I'm using a mathematical model to model the metabolism. And that was when I realized there are things that I can do, there are things that I can change in order to not end up being like my relatives, being, being or having the weight that increases risk of other metabolic diseases. So I went on this transformation health and fitness journey when I was 22, so quite late, I would say, all throughout my life, in terms of like, I've never liked exercise. Like, I've never exercised voluntarily until I was 22. So everyone,
You're
in
killing me.
school, everyone
You're
in
killing
school.
me
Well, the
with this
thing is,
late in life.
well, I'm just saying, like, in school, right? A lot of people have gone through their sportsman
Yep. Yep.
period. They were all like, fit in school, and then they gain weight, and then they have their
Yeah.
transformation late, right? I never
Yep.
had that. I was
Yeah. Okay.
unhealthy all the
From the
time,
start.
from the start until I was 22. That's what I mean when I say late. I mean, granted, 22 is not late to change, but I started working out, started eating healthily, and then I lost a bunch of weight. It's about 45 pounds in like 4 months or whatnot. And then I went to do my master's in New York, Columbia University, also in biotechnology. And that was when um, I realized the way people look at you and people treat you differently with the way you look. Because when I
Yes.
moved to New York, I already lost all those weight. People in
Yes.
New York didn't know the fat Latt.
Right.
They
Yes.
only knew the thinner Latt. So that
Wow.
was the psychological change, as I've gone through the physical change, and people are like, oh, you've done well. People who saw my change, they're like, wow, you've done great. But then it's different when you meet somebody for the first time and you're
Yep.
already a normal way, and they never thought that you had these struggles. They never thought you've battled, however long you
Sure.
did. um and then, as I always tell people, health and fitness journey is not a stop stop and go sort of
Yep.
a journey. It's
It's
not
not a
something
destination.
that you accomplished once and then you can
Right.
forget about it. It's a journey.
Yep.
It's a forever, for the rest of your life. It's a lifestyle sort of journey where you will go through phases where you put on some weight back again, and you go on holiday, and then you come back, you realign, go back on the consistency, and then you lose the weight again. And then maybe you'll have a next goal, or next holiday, or next wedding you have to go to. You have to be in shape with. You set your goal, you build some muscle, you lose some fat, and then you go to that wedding, you eat a lot, and then you gain some weight. It's always a pendulum where it's always
You just
oscillating between.
described my whole summer.
There you go. That's how that's how I see it. And
Yep.
I have definitely lost weight and gained some weight and lost weight again, and now I am still on this journey. I'm still enjoying this journey, surprisingly, because a lot of people would find it very fatiguing to have to go through the diet, to have to go through eating the same thing again and again, to go through the same routine of exercises. And the key here is to find something that is sustainable for your lifestyle, and also to find something that's enjoyable, that you actually look forward to, and set goals. I think small wins, celebrate small wins. So that was my master's, and then I left my master's. I graduated. I started working in a pharmaceutical company called the Medicines Company in New Jersey for 6 months. And then I got promoted and got transferred to the Munich office for a year.
Oh.
And that was when I got inspired by the people within the company who all have like PhDs, but they're also very entrepreneurial. And I was inspired by them to go on and apply for a PhD program, which I did. And I got into University of Oxford in physiology, anatomy, and genetics. So my PhD,
Wow.
or they call it DPhil in Oxford specifically. If you see a DPhil, you know they have a PhD from Oxford. My DPhil research was specifically in the metabolism of the type 2 diabetic heart in hypoxia.
Wow.
And hypoxia means low oxygen environment.
Yeah.
So my interest in hypoxic diabetic heart, especially in heart attacks, it's very relatable within my family. As I said earlier, diabetes and cardiovascular disease, how the two diseases intersect, that understanding, it's more personal, if not anything for me. And then after that, I graduated from a PhD in 2016. I started working for a startup company in Singapore, back in Southeast Asia, which is a diabetes management program. So I was the director of business development. I helped connect the program with like health insurers, reimbursements, and healthcare providers, and all of that, to help coach people to eat better, to exercise, to maintain the steps and all of that. After that, I got introduced to HVMN, Health Via Nutrition, the company I'm working for today, until today in 2019. They flew me out here to San Francisco when we were still based in San Francisco, and they offered me a job. Then I moved here in August 2000. So it's coming up to a 5-year anniversary working for Health Via Nutrition now. End of August is when I started working for them in 2019. And I have been working for them since. I have been the research lead, and I have also overseen a lot of projects. One of the biggest would be our $6 million contract with SOCOM, Special Command, looking at using exogenous ketones in improving physical and cognitive performance, and also any sort of collaborations with researchers, with universities. I'm also the one who oversee all of them. So if you are listening, if you're a scientist, if you're a doctor, you're interested in any studies, or if you have any contacts in any foundations that would love to explore the use of Ketone IQ in treating any diseases, feel free to reach out.
That's amazing, and I seriously see something in our future with Ideal Protein in that respect, as far as augmenting weight loss. And again, talking about, because this is all kind of fledgling stuff, and we're super excited to be on the cutting edge with that. That $6 million study, I did want to point out to our listeners and viewers that that's with the Department of Defense. Like, that's special ops with the Department of Defense, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Absolutely crazy stuff. But again, especially with rebreathing and seals and all that stuff, they want to make sure that they're protecting their brain when it may or may not be hypoxic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, super fascinating stuff. And so then Health Via Modern Nutrition, flagship product here, Ketone IQ. Exogenous ketones, a liquid exogenous ketone supplement. This is going to be kind of the focus of the show, because Ideal Protein and HVMN have created this partnership, because we believe that we certainly can help our clients in many different ways, in my mind, in all 3 phases of our Ideal Protein protocol. So we're going to talk about that during the show. I want to get started first. I want to put some perspective into this. And you've already spoken to the concept of metabolic health first. And like I said, you are the most decorated expert, and actually the only other person I've had on my show who's had their own podcast. And so I was fascinated when I did a little research, and I went to listen to some older episodes of your show that is on YouTube. And I wanted to play your intro to your show because it gave me goosebumps, and we'll talk about that later. Here it comes. Well, I'm a geek. You got to know I'm just a geek.
All 8 billion of us are doing metabolism at all times. This show is about learning what metabolism is, how it affects you in every way possible, from mood and mental state to performance and energy. We are all about fine tuning the human experience for you to achieve the best self you can be. And if you are someone who loves science, curious to know how your body works and how to optimize it, then you are in the right place. This is the HVMN podcast. Oh God, I was still in my old apartment then too.
It gave me goosebumps again. Your intensity, your passion about this, right? That's it. Who doesn't want that? Right?
I mean, I thought when I recorded that, I thought I had like, oh God, I look so serious and like I had low energy. I'm like, what if people, when you first start to do podcasts or when you start to do content, you always think about, okay, what if people, all the what ifs,
Right,
if people think that you're boring or people think you're too low energy, people think you're too high energy, like what if people get annoyed? At the end of the day, you can't please everyone. That's one thing
you
I
just got to
learned.
do it.
You
right?
just got to be yourself. You just got to say what you think is right and portray the emotions that is most genuine to yourself, because otherwise it gets tiring because you have to put a facade, you have to act every time in front of people. So at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what, I don't need to care much and just be myself and say what I think.
But I love this. Okay, this is where we're going to start, because this is the concept of metabolic health. Has been exploding. And I kind of feel like the COVID pandemic was almost a springboard for that, because I think it pretty much brought it to the forefront of what's truly important, right? And we come to find out people with lower metabolic health could not respond to COVID well, right? The people that seemed to do well were the ones that had better metabolic health. So, everybody has these misconceptions. I have a fast metabolism, I have a slow metabolism, I have this and that. And I kind of felt like it would be great if we went ahead and established some of these concepts for people, because to me, this is the future of ideal protein. This is the future of healthcare. This should be the future of our entire healthcare system, is metabolic health first. You agree?
Yep.
Yeah. So right out of the gate, definition of metabolism. Metabolism is the set of cellular mechanisms that produce energy from our food and our environment to power every single cell in the human body. Metabolic health is a term used to describe how well we are generating and processing energy. And I got this from Dr. Casey Means. She has an incredible blog on her Levels CGM website, as well as her new book, Good Energy, which I highly recommend to everybody. But I feel like, this is where all of us can understand where we start when we start thinking about metabolism.
Yeah.
And so then if we're going to establish then a metabolism that isn't working, right? Metabolic dysfunction being the term that describes a metabolism not working properly, not able to power their cells with the right fuels at the right time for them to function at their best. We now understand that metabolic dysfunction is the foundation of many chronic diseases, both physically and mentally. How does that hit you? What are your thoughts on all that?
No, I mean, you basically, that's how I would describe it. I think you pretty much described it very accurately, and we can obviously go into details as to why we think it should be said this way, and especially when you said the foundation of many chronic diseases, both physically and mentally. And I think the mental part is definitely something that's fairly new, especially with the emergence of like is it Brain Energy by Dr. Chris Palmer?
Yeah, Chris Palmer.
Yeah. So he and
Georgia Eid.
Yeah, and Dr. Chris Palmer has done remarkable work around this area to really pinpoint and highlight what metabolic health has to do with psychiatry, and they call it metabolic psychiatry, and how fixing the metabolic health could potentially not only fix the physical like comorbidities or the physiological comorbidities, but also fixing the psychiatric disorders as well.
Yeah, for the past, ever since his book dropped, my social media feed, especially my LinkedIn feed, has been all about the metabolic foundation of mental health. Which again, if we think about what's going on in our country, if not the world, mental health is declining at a rapid pace, and it's something that really needs to be addressed. And I think, and we're going to talk a little bit about brain energetics a little bit later in the show, that is the foundation of some of this work and the foundation of some of this theory.
I mean, if you think about it as well, like and our whole body is connected, right? Our brain is connected to your nervous system. It's connected to your endocrine system. It's connected to your muscles, to your bones. And it doesn't make sense if we think that metabolic dysfunction only affects your muscles and your fats, and it does not affect your brain. It doesn't make sense if you think about it, because the brain has access to all the nutrients the same way, the same nutrients that the rest of your body has access to. So if whatever that your body is having access to is causing metabolic dysfunction, is, quote unquote, causing harm to your body, then rationally it should cause harm to your brain as well.
Yeah, but like you said, it's been disconnected up till now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that aha moment that everybody's having, going, "Oh my God, why didn't we think of this sooner?" Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I took this off of HVMN website because I love, again, addressing the metabolism and how our metabolism is under attack. I use these statistics a lot. It's been found, there's a study that shows that 88% of Americans actually have some form of metabolic dysfunction. 75% of us are overweight and or obese. 43% are obese. And 34% of Americans are pre-diabetic, with 9.4% of them being diabetic. And in fact, again, in looking at interviews that Casey Means has done, I think that if you combine those two numbers, we're close to 50% of the United States is either pre-diabetic or diabetic. And the challenge of that is that most pre-diabetic people don't understand that they are. Right?
Yep.
So yeah,
until the problem with diabetes is that until you're diagnosed, not a lot of things are being done to pre-diabetic to avoid them going into diabetes.
Getting there, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most commonly it used to be that doctors would say, you need to eat right and exercise.
Yeah.
Now that's all they'd say. And we'll talk about what eating right meant, but that's all they would say. But they really wouldn't give them guidelines. They didn't have they didn't know what to tell them to eat.
I mean, doctors are not, they're trained to treat diseases. They're trained to, have surgeries. They're trained to really, fix things that are broken. But how do we avoid things being broken in the first place? And that's where the disconnect is in the healthcare system.
Absolutely. So that gets us to the topic of ketones in general. I would love for you to go ahead and introduce the subject of ketones. Our viewers in Ideal Protein Nation should somewhat understand that, especially in our phase 1 weight loss phase, that they are in a state of metabolic ketosis. But I'd like to go ahead and really have you give them the science of ketones.
Sure.
Again, there's still those myths out there that ketosis is unsafe, and what are the differences in those things?
Okay.
So yeah, take us through that.
So ketones are a natural molecule. It's not something new that we just created. It's not a miracle drug that a company, invented and then patented. So that's why we're able to sell Ketone IQ at such an affordable price, because it's not monopolized by any of these big pharmas. It's not monopolized by big food companies. It's a molecule that has been around for as long as organisms that can metabolize fats are around. So it is only created within your body when you are low on glucose stores. Either you have to be low on glucose, blood glucose, and you have to be low on glycogen stores, because if you're low on blood glucose but not glycogen stores, your body will break down the glycogen stores to create glucose to begin with. So you need to be low on glucose stores, and then your body will downregulate insulin, and that gives signal to the liver to create ketones from fat. So compared to glucose, one study in 1995 by Sato, it showed that ketones is more efficient than glucose when it comes to ATP created or energy generated per molecule of oxygen used. So what happened is that with technology, we managed to recreate this molecule outside of our bodies. Because if you're using it within your body, if you're creating it within your body, then it's, like, great, you pull up the slide, ketogenesis is the process. It's creating your endogenous ketones. It's creating your own ketones within your liver. The problem with that is that it requires strict conditions, like low on glucose, whether you are intermittent fasting or you're on a keto diet. So you can, but for performance, for example, for athletes, so that's where we started. That's where the research around exogenous ketones started, because the DARPA, U.S. government, wanted a fuel to fuel these military personnel on long and demanding journeys, and therefore creating an exogenous ketones that bypass the dietary requirement in order to get this super efficient fuel needs to be done.
So what I'm getting from what you just said is that ketones are a more efficient fuel inside the human body.
Mm-hmm.
You get more ATP from breaking the ketones down than you would glucose.
That's a simplified way to look at it, but obviously there's always going to be exceptions. There's going to be situations which are very specifically that you need glucose for, that you need fats for, that you need. But all in all, we have seen in studies that when they look at oxidation of ketones versus glucose, ketones is slightly more efficient. And then when they look at a failing heart, for example, a failing heart, it's having difficulty creating ATP for contraction and for its function. Failing heart always prefers ketone. That has been established as well. So same thing with the brain. When ketones are available, the brain will preferentially take up ketones regardless if they have glucose in the body or not. Ketosis. So ketogenesis, not to be confused with ketosis. It's a state where you have your blood ketone levels equals to or higher than 0.5 millimolar. And then ketoacidosis is the one that you mentioned. Like, a lot of people think that ketones are dangerous, especially people who are not in this field, who are not well versed in ketone metabolism in general. When they think about ketones, they think about ketoacidosis, which is a state happens specifically in diabetic patients, where your insulin resistance is so severe that your body is not actually able to take the glucose out of the blood. So you have high blood glucose level, but because your body is still registering that you are starving, because it is unable to bring in the glucose to create energy, and therefore saying to the liver, hey, create ketones because we are low on energy, we are low on glucose, even though they have very high blood glucose, because the body is not able to use it. So it starts creating ketones on top of that. And it's a perpetual, like, negative cycle where you have high glucose level and high ketone levels, and that creates acidosis, because ketones at a high dose can be acidic. So when you change pH in the body, same as when you change any other environmental factors such as temperature, your pH, your volume, your all of these things affect your enzymes and your bodily function, because all the enzymes and hormones function at a very, very narrow window of optimal range when it comes to pH, temperature, and all of that.
Yeah. This actually happened to a friend of mine. He became type 1 diabetic in his 20s, his early 20s, had no idea what was happening. He ended up going to the hospital. He had all these terrible symptoms. His blood sugars were like 400, I want to say.
Wow.
His ketones were through the roof because his pancreas stopped producing insulin. So in that for type 1 diabetics, this is a dangerous situation they're always concerned about. And when they don't have enough insulin, this is what can happen to them.
Exactly.
And it's a very scary situation. But we're only going to see diabetic ketoacidosis in that extreme kind of a situation,
Exactly.
in the lack in an environment without insulin.
Exactly.
Right?
So we have to also take note that the ketone itself is not the cause of this, right?
Correct.
Just because
Right.
you have high ketone levels doesn't really like cause you to have a death sort of risk, because what's causing this is the severe, insulin resistance, is the lack of insulin, is your body not being able to use the glucose that's circulating in your body, and therefore creating ketones in order to feed the rest of the body with the energy that it needs. So ketone in and of itself is just a molecule that's just a fuel, same as glucose.
It's a natural fuel.
But what is happening here is, as we talked about earlier, is metabolic dysfunction.
Yes.
It's your body's disability disability to process and create energy given the sources, given the fuels that you ingest.
So ketogenesis is ketones that are being created inside your body, particularly when your body is burning body fat, right? And we're going to refer to those as endogenous, which means inside the body, right? Endogenous ketones come from ketogenesis, where your body is breaking down your body fat and producing those. What then the difference would be? Tell us about exogenous ketones.
So exogenous ketones is external source of ketones, which is like Ketone IQ. It's essentially source of ketone that you can directly drink or eat. I think right now it's only drinkable ketones, directly drink in order to increase your blood ketone levels. So you can bypass the strict dietary requirements, as well as you don't have to wait for your body to kick into ketogenesis, and therefore you can get into ketosis much faster. And as we were talking earlier, John did a baseline measurement right before we started, and he's going to measure it at the end of this podcast and see how high his blood ketones are. And this is exactly what exogenous ketones supposed to do. It's supposed to increase your blood ketone levels acutely, but temporarily, versus a keto diet. You are producing your own ketones via your own fat, and therefore you're breaking down the fat, but it takes a bit of time before you kick into that ketogenesis. And once you get into that ketotic state, it will last much longer. It's essentially last as long as you are on a keto diet. Whereas exogenous ketones, it gives you that boost for like up to maybe 6 hours, and then you have to either top up or making sure that you are on a keto diet to ensure the perpetuity of blood ketone level elevation.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically, again, ideal protein, especially our weight loss phase 1 phase, is a ketogenic weight loss phase. We'll go into it a little bit deeper later. But the idea or the concept has been, well, why would I ever supplement ketones? Because, and I'll ask you this question straight out, Latt. If I take my metabolism, I'm not in ketosis already, right? If I take an exogenous ketone supplement, is that going to make me burn my own fat? Is it going to make me lose weight?
Not directly. It's not directly going to make you burn your own fat. What it does is it supplies your body with the fuel, with the super fuel that your body likes. So what it does is that cognitively you become more alert, energetically you become more active. You want to go to the gym, you take it before the gym. Okay, now you feel motivated. Then you do things that is part of your lifestyle that contributes towards that fat burning, contributes towards that weight loss, right? And on top of that, physiologically, we have also seen in studies that when you take exogenous ketones, it upregulates all the enzymes that are related to ketone metabolism. Meaning to say that once the exogenous ketones are being used up in, say, 4 to 6 hours, now your body is primed and ready to metabolize any endogenous ketones that you are going to make. So if you're not on keto diet already, and then you decided to go into transition into a keto diet, you're using exogenous ketone to make sure that, one, you have enough energy in your body and make sure you don't get fatigued, and two, to upregulate these enzymes so that you're primed and ready for your endogenous ketones. You can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the concept. And the challenge of it is because, again, in America especially, things get so sensationalized, and then they get monetized, and then they, how can we make money off of this? And there have been some ketone, I'm going to use air quotes, products out there. Just take one of these and chew it up, and you're going to burn more fat and lose weight.
Yeah.
And again, this is just absolutely not the mechanism by which a product like this helps you to lose weight. It's not a direct situation. I will tell you, recently I put a gummy situation to the test, and it did absolutely zero to change my state of ketosis.
Yeah.
And so this really bothers me when I'm in this space dealing with people who are desperate for answers, and someone's going to throw something out there just to make money off them, because all you have to say is, oh, you'll lose weight. And there it is. They'll buy it.
And I'm so glad you bring this up as well. And as much as I would love to sell this as a miracle drug, as much as I would love to sell this as, one size fits all that solves all your problems, it's not. And I think it's important for people to understand the science behind it, to understand their own body physiology, because once you understand that, it doesn't matter whether you're using Ketone IQ or keto diet or any other source of ketones. Once you understand how your body works, then you know exactly what you're doing in order to manipulate your metabolism to optimize weight loss and to optimize metabolic optimization. Now, having said that, it is, like you said, it is very easy for people to just throw a product out there and say, oh, with this, you can do this A, B, C, D, E, without providing any evidence to do that. And there are people who are buying it because people, don't know better. And that's why you and I are doing this, in order to educate people. So know that ketones, exogenous ketones specifically, does not directly burn your fat. It is not a fat burner. I mean, there are a lot of fat burners out there that you can buy. And even then, they are burning
it's questionable.
The trivial amount of fat. It just increases, thermogenesis by a little bit. That is not enough to result in overall weight loss. So it may increase your energy level and help you work out and all that, and sweat more. You feel like you are burning more, maybe having the placebo effect, and hence you work out harder. But overall, it does not have a significant weight loss effect. And then in terms of exogenous ketones, know what are they for. Use it for the exact purpose that you want it to be used for. So for example, use it if you're tired at the end of your work day, you need to gym like I do. I would have a shot of ketones, because that gives me the energy I need in order to get through my workout and my cardio, and then come back home. I'm perfectly fine. I'm not completely knocked out. Or if you want to do it at the start of the day before a podcast, so that your brain is wired to your mouth and you're working at the same pace, then do that. Don't do it just, I take one shot and then it's supposed to do its thing and burn fat while I sit down and watch TV.
Is that my problem? See, my podcasts are going to be so much better these days, because I'm going to do this 30 minutes before. And that's why my brain is not connected to my mouth as often as it should be.
Because a lot of times, I take this before I give any presentations, before I go on any podcast.
I will now too.
Most of the time, your mouth and your brain is working on a different pace. Sometimes my brain is on 100 miles per hour and my mouth can't keep up, and then I stutter because I have so much ideas and thoughts to say, but my mouth is not saying it at the same pace as my brain. But vice versa, you get, your mouth will go really quickly, and then your brain is like, what was that again? And you blank out, and then now you're like just awkward silence sitting together with the interviewer.
True.
Yeah. So
absolutely
for me, it gives my brain, personal experience here. It gives my brain the ability to hold on to that thought while I'm explaining something, so that I can go back to it and then say what I wanted to say after this previous point.
I love that. I love that. And actually, I'm going to have an opportunity to be speaking at our conventions that are coming up in the fall.
Oh,
Ooh,
nice.
that just got out. And I'm definitely doing this right before I go on stage.
Where is it going to be?
30 minutes. Well, we just announced we're having our annual conventions are back. They're doing them in Chicago,
Okay,
Orlando, Seattle, and Toronto.
oh wow,
Coming up September and October.
I would love to go to at least one of them.
Yeah, West Coast, it might be that Seattle date.
Okay.
Yeah, super cool.
Who should I talk to?
Fun. So much fun to have you. I will make sure that they talk to you. Well,
okay.
I'll be your connection. I'll be the
okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about that. Let's get back. We've kind of established here again. One of my main reasons for the show is for people to be just so unafraid, not necessarily unafraid of ketones, but to actually desire them and to use them, to want their body producing them and to use them so that they are optimizing, like you said, optimizing metabolic health and human performance, right? And so I get back to, I use this graphic on my last podcast. Please jump in. To me, the human body was meant to be the ultimate hybrid machine. And when we are what we call metabolically flexible, when the metabolism is functioning appropriately, we are meant to burn carbs for high intensity efforts, right? Lifting heavy things, running really fast. And we're more meant to burn ketones for lower, slower, consistent types of daily activities, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. No. Fat. If you go on a walk, for a long walk, if you go on a hill hike, you're on zone 2, your body will prefer to burn fats because fats will give you more ATP per gram, more, a higher calorie content, but it also takes more oxygen. It takes longer to create that energy. And therefore, when you are on low intensity, your body has time to burn that fat and create energy. Whereas if you are in an anaerobic state where you are intense, where you are doing intensive exercise and high intensity sprints, for example, your body will tap into the glucose stores because the first part of glucose metabolism is glycolysis, and that requires no oxygen. But it produces only a little bit of ATP compared to the whole process of ATP generation. I'm not going to go into details of the oxidative phosphorylation, but the first part of glucose, the first part of glucose does not require oxygen, and that is why in high intensity exercise does prefer carbs over ketones.
And that's the thing. In my undergraduate degree in exercise science, that's how we're taught, right? The preferred energy for aerobic exercise is more fat, and the most efficient and preferred, I love that, most efficient and preferred. And then high intensity exercise, the most efficient and preferred is going to be your glucose, right? Nobody, in my estimation, should be burning glucose on a podcast or a Zoom call or answering emails, right? And so,
unless you're sprinting using this treadmill, under this treadmill while doing
what? I think there's somebody in our company that does that all the time because she's always on the treadmill when we're on a Zoom call. And so she's the only person I know that might be doing that. But I love this. I took this from your website again, because it's just such a great informational website, and understanding how, as a species, how we've actually evolved and how this type of metabolism is kind of our default, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it quite early on before we press the record button as well. Like, genetically, we are not meant to have such high amount of carbs, and I think couple that with the sedentary lifestyle that we are all having these days versus the hunter-gatherer era where humans are always out having physical activity, we are now consuming more calories than we're burning it, and therefore we're just ending up storing it. And then I think hormonally as well and physiologically, we are not letting our body oscillate between fed and fasted state, because naturally what we're meant to do is in a fed state, we have insulin go up and it will take up all the nutrients from the blood because we just had food and we're supposed to put them in places where it's supposed to be, either store it as glycogen
Yep.
or fat, or the nutrients being put in the muscles. If you're working out, you use them. And then we go into a fasted state where we are going to break down those fat storage. We are going to break down whatever we've eaten and stored, because metabolism is essentially made out of anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is building, catabolism is breaking down. Our body's constantly building and breaking down stuff, whether it's substrates or hormones or whatever, because there's always turnover rate. And what we're doing these days with sedentary lifestyle and excess in calories, we are essentially just bombarding that system into fat state all the time. And that is why we are having the dysfunction and disconnect between our body needing to burn all this storage versus we're just piling up the storage.
So let me go back. I've got another slide that I stole from your website for you to, if you could speak to this slide for us.
Yeah, sure. I think the most important point of this slide is that why are we not just burning fat all the time? Because fat, as you see there, has a very high amount of calories. We store it very well and we have access to it. Why don't we just burn fat? Why do we need carbs? Why do we need ketones? And the answer lies in the brain, because the brain ordinarily would prefer glucose. It uses glucose. It doesn't use fat because fat does not bypass the blood-brain barrier. However, when you are in starvation mode and you are low on carb storage, where does it get the source of energy from? It can't pull any energy from the fats. So that's why fats gets broken down into ketones, which is a smaller molecule compared to fat molecules. And ketones can bypass the blood-brain barrier and enters the brain and gets metabolized as energy. And then in studies where, because we have exogenous ketones now, we can investigate what happens then if you have glucose and have ketones at the same time. So what we have observed is that the brain and the heart especially would take up ketones proportional to the availability of ketones in the blood, regardless of other substrates. So it will still take up glucose and it will still take up fats in the heart, but with ketones, it goes up as long as ketones available, those organs would preferentially take it up.
Yeah, to me it's mind blowing, and I don't know why, but this is something that I've really just found in the literature and found in different podcasts and things that I've been listening to. And like you said, it's, to me, as I've been describing it to my clients, right? Glucose is the very basic molecule of sugar energy, of carbohydrate energy. Ketones is the most basic molecule of fat energy or fat oxidation, right? And so they're kind of equivalent. If you give them both to the brain and if you give them both to the heart, and I've also, Jeff Volek says the muscles as well, that they're going to preferentially uptake those ketones when available. Crazy cool.
Yep. And we all know that our bodies are not engineered for aesthetics. They're not engineered to, our bodies don't care how you feel. It always prioritizes its own survivability.
Correct.
It always prioritizes its own efficiency and survival. And therefore, it will always choose the most efficient fuel. It will always choose the path of least resistance. So if they are preferentially taking up ketones, it's telling us something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that kind of springboards into this concept, because like you had talked about Dr. Chris Palmer earlier in his book on brain energy and the metabolic foundations of mental health. Can you kind of speak to this study here, which again, and this wonderful graphics from this study?
No, this is a review paper which nicely elucidated all the different studies that points out how important metabolic health is in neurodegenerative diseases and how important ketones are to brain metabolism. Because what they have noticed is that a lot of these neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's, dementia, and whatnot, it is related to glucose hypometabolism. And when you have glucose hypometabolism, so hypo means low, so you have deficiency in glucose metabolism in the brain, you create energy deficit. When you have energy deficit, your brain does not have enough energy. It creates oxidative stress, it creates inflammation, and it creates mitochondrial dysfunction. And as a result, when you have mitochondrial dysfunction, it also means that your cells, your neurons, are not metabolizing properly. And that creates this cycle that causes neurodegeneration. And when you supplement it with ketones, what happens then? Ketones essentially is, so think about when you're driving, there is a traffic jam, and Google Maps or whatever app takes you through another route to get to your destination faster to bypass that traffic jam. This is exactly what happens because the glucose metabolism pathway is blocked, essentially. And ketones actually use another transporter to enter the cell. So glucose uses glucose transporter or GLUT, and ketones use MCT, not to confuse with medium chain triglycerides. Right. MCT here is monocarboxylase transporter, which transports ketones and lactate into the cell. So because it's using different vehicle to enter the cell, even when you are insulin resistant, when you're insulin resistant, the GLUT transporters are not responsive and therefore not able to pull in the glucose, and therefore you have a glucose hypometabolism. But with ketones, it is not affected by insulin resistance. Yeah, right. So it gets right in and it creates energy to restore the metabolism. And because it restores metabolism, it restores mitochondrial function and it decreases oxidative stress. And we have seen ketones does decrease inflammation via decrease in NLRP3 inflammasome.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was another thing that came up. I forget what podcast that came up in, but that's a mind blower as well. The ketones actually decrease inflammation in a couple of different ways. When we get into a ketogenic diet, and particularly myself, in phase 1, I felt it, but then I maintained that in my maintenance life as well, because insulin is very pro-inflammatory. So if insulin is in your system all the time, your inflammatory response is going to be heightened. But then also when we get into a ketogenic state, that insulin response and that inflammation goes down. But there's a secondary pathway. And I'd like for you to speak. I missed that point. Ketones are not just energy. They're not just fuel. It also seems as if they act as signalers, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one example of how ketones act as a signaler to kind of shut down that inflammasome.
Yeah. So ketone as a signaling molecule is a interesting area of research that it's actively being researched on right now. And they have also noticed that ketones affect DNA on a DNA level. It's called the beta hydroxybutyrylation of the DNA. So similar to methylation of histones, it affects the DNA and therefore affects the transcription and translation further down the road. So that affects, what proteins get upregulated, gets downregulated, and therefore creates the whole cascade of events that eventually, have a profound effect down the road.
Yeah. And again, that would be the science of epigenetics that we're seeing that, right? And so whereas someone might have a gene for something, whether it gets turned on or turned off, very oftentimes is related to their nutrition.
Correct.
And specifically, if ketones are present in their bloodstream, that has the ability to shift it in the right direction.
Yeah. I think the more we learn about all these metabolites, the more we know that these metabolites are more than just energy source. They're also signaling molecules. I think glucose is the same way as well. Crazy. And it's crazy. And that opens up a whole new area of research and as I was saying earlier, all these molecules and compounds work in a very, very narrow range. And therefore, there's an optimal range. And it's hard to find out if that range is compromised. Is it going to affect the energy level first, or is it going to affect the signaling level first?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could geek out on this all day. All right. So I want to bring this in for a landing, and bringing it in for a landing is why did iDoProtein partner up with Ketone IQ? What would the benefit of using Ketone IQ be for an iDoProtein client, an iDoProtein dieter in any of all three phases? And so I wanted to introduce it this way. You and I've been trying to introduce to you a little bit more how our program works. And for me, the way I like to describe this best is that the iDoProtein protocol is a medically developed and professionally supervised protocol, which means we're doing a couple of different things all at the same time to create that desired effect. And when we get those things done, we reverse metabolic dysfunction, we reset metabolic health through using therapeutic carbohydrate restriction and ketosis. We get our patients in a state of ketosis. What this does is it creates meaningful weight loss, which is fat loss, right? We don't want to just lose weight. We want to lose fat, spare muscle.
Yep.
And if people stick with us and do all three phases, it creates long-lasting lifestyle change. And truly, it can change what's possible for your life. The thing that sets the iDoProtein protocol different from your do-it-yourself ketosis is that we don't just, you have to restrict carbohydrates in order to get in nutritional ketosis, right? And so that's a given. But we also restrict fats, because if weight loss is one of your primary goals for being in a ketogenic metabolic state, we don't want to be eating the plate fats because our body will selectively burn that first. So what we want to do is keep our fats low on our plate so that we're tapping into stored body fat to burn that. And we also then very specifically apply adequate protein to support muscle mass so that we are not losing muscle as we're losing this weight. If you were looking in the literature, and there are a lot of really great studies, especially coming out of Europe right now, on what we would be considered to be a very low-calorie ketogenic diet, or VLCKD. You'll see that in the literature. And so that's the space that we're coming from. To me, then, we established that just taking ketones doesn't make you burn more fat. And that's been the barrier to using exogenous ketones in the iDoProtein program to date. But now, I think if we kind of open up that and understand the indirect contribution that Ketone IQ or exogenous ketones might help our clients with, now we're understanding it from a whole different ballgame. There's 4 different ways that I see it that you've taught us. You taught us during the webinar. Number 1 is appetite suppression. Number 2 is curbing those sugar cravings. Number 3 is helping people out with that increased energy, both for their brain and their body. And that 4th one I love is that upregulation of the enzymes, or greasing the fat burning machine, as I like to call that. Mm-hmm. Right? And so a lot of people, although when we get in ketosis, our appetite is suppressed. Mm-hmm. And our cravings are suppressed because insulin is suppressed, right? But we still have people that do get hungry in between meals. And especially during that first transition week, going from a high carb diet to a low carb diet and getting in ketosis, right? You go through that speed bump called keto flu. And so this is where using the Ketone IQ supplement I think this is the wheelhouse for that. Can you speak to the appetite suppression aspect of boosting your ketogenic level with Ketone IQ?
Sure. So there are 2 papers so far that I shared during the webinar, which are these 2. So the first study is a ketone ester drink affect the ghrelin and appetite. So ghrelin is essentially a hunger hormone. If it gets low, that means you feel less hungry. So what we have seen is that with the ketones, with the exogenous ketones, it lowers ghrelin and therefore appetite. And the other paper is leptin sensitized. So leptin is your satiety hormone. So if you have high leptin sensitivity, means that your brain is leptin is being secreted in your fat tissues as well, by the way. And your brain essentially gets signal from leptin and basically registers that you are full or you feeling
right.
satiated. So what we have seen is a 1,3-butadiene specifically, which is the active ingredient in Ketone IQ, increases leptin sensitivity and in the brain. And this has been done in animals, in rodents. So what we have done is basically taking the understanding and insights from these two papers. One is from Ketones, which is not what Ketone IQ is, but it has been done in humans. And then the other one is 1,3-butadiene, which is Ketone IQ, but done in animals. We combine them, and now we are having an active clinical study with University of British Columbia, actively recruiting to look at the effect of Ketone IQ on ghrelin, on leptin, on peptide YY, and overall calorie consumption. So I can't wait to share the data from this study, hopefully middle of next year. So we are going to have results on both healthy individuals and overweight individuals, and looking at the difference in hormonal change when they have taken Ketone IQ with their food.
I'm really excited for that as well. This is a concept in weight loss that has just been debated, talked about, and et cetera, et cetera. The idea of set point and a lot of stuff that goes on deals with that ghrelin leptin system, right? And I love the fact that you've got a product that directly impacts that and or helps to augment the already effect of having endogenous ketones from your diet in your bloodstream. So that's one of the best ways that we've used this in our practice here is for people who there's usually that time of day that affects most people, whether it's between lunch and dinner or whether it's your craving after dinner, that you kind of get that hunger or that craving. And for me, if you use the Ketone IQ in that situation, it goes straight away. And so therefore, it helps our people stick to the protocol. To do the protocol, you eat 4 meals a day and nothing else. 3 of those are based on ideal protein foods. You're eating 4 cups of vegetables a day and your own 6 to 8 ounces of protein. It's the in-between times that when people start filling in with extra stuff that derails the program. And this will keep people on the program and from adding additional things in.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's the ability for us to focus on what is the priority. So for example, here, the priority is not Ketone IQ. The priority is consistency. And if you can get that sort of consistency with Ketone IQ, then amazing, right? So, but focus on getting consistent, focus on doing the protocol as close as you can in order to get the results that you would expect, because science is like this, right? Science, you have a given protocol, and with the given protocol you have a hypothesis, and if the hypothesis is proven, then the protocol will always yield the same results. So if you are consistent with the protocol, you will have the result. So
man, you just nailed that. And that's what we've always said, in the over 20 years of Ideal Protein. This is repeatable, measurable, consistently, right? I have never, in all my practice, I've never seen a therapy that has been as consistent as Ideal Protein. The protocol works if you do it, right? And this is just kind of that thing that really helps you do the protocol right. It's not a hack. It's not anything that helps you get away with not being on protocol, which I know is a concern that some people have. It's not that. It's actually designed to help you do the protocol right.
Yep.
So from your website, I took this, and if you could kind of go through the 3 different profiles that you feel in the general population that Ketone IQ helps, and then we're going to do the same for the Ideal Protein population.
Yeah, sure. I think what we're targeting would be the health optimizers, which are, the biohackers, and they want to perform better, they want to be more productive, and they want to improve longevity, for example. And then you have the athletes. We have, as we talked about earlier, we have a lot of partner athletes in the Olympics, Tour de France, who are using it for endurance, who are using it for improved recovery as well. And obviously, the last group would be the keto dieter. And even though this group can potentially fall under health optimizers as well, but we want to really um, purposefully target and make it very clear that keto dieters can also benefit from ketone IQ, because a lot of people, they often have the misconception and say, oh, why am I taking exogenous ketones when my whole goal is to burn my own ketones, burn my own fat, and convert it into my own ketones? And the point is to be able to, like we said earlier, all those different benefits, from appetite suppression to sugar cravings to boosting energy in between your sessions, in between your transitions, in order to have better hunger control and better glucose management.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I took this from a website, an internal website that we have for our clinics. And this kind of maps it all out and lays it out for our people. The people in our clinics that are going to benefit from using this supplement as part of their program are going to be those brand new clients as they're starting, especially during those first 2 weeks, to transition from a very high carb diet to get into ketosis without as many symptoms, with a smoother transition. It will help speed their body up, figuring out how to burn the fat in the first place and become more efficient faster than what we might see without it. In our clinic, what we find is, once you've had your big weight loss and you're in maintenance, and like you had said before, Latt, we kind of go through those ups and downs where I've gained some because I was on holiday. And when people come back for a restart, they seem to have a harder time getting into it, or just not cheating, right? They're just little cheaters as opposed to. And so what we find for these people is it makes that reintroduction back into phase one so much smoother and so much easier. So those people we really want to target as well. But there's also the lifestyle people. There's also people like myself. Like I said, I use Ketone IQ definitely for brain energy as well as for actual energy. So especially with athletics as well. I wanted to spotlight one of our favorite influencers within our company, Megan Davis. She is an absolute miracle story, quite actually. She had scleroderma and almost died, went through stem cell therapy, etc. You'd never think that this super athletic woman had been through all of that. She used the proteins from Ideal Protein during her process. She was using them before. She used them during her healing, and now she uses them for her fitness lifestyle. And Ketone IQ has just jumped right in with all of that. And so again, for our athletes to boost your workout sessions, boost your performance in a race. Myself in triathlon, I was thinking, oh my God, I would absolutely be using this right now if I were training and competing in triathlon. So this is something that's a wonderful lifestyle supplement that has many different uses that we're still going to be figuring out for a long time. Latt, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's been such a great experience being with you. I hope that our listeners now have a better understanding as to why they might be seeing Ketone IQ in their Ideal Protein clinics. I hope that they will actually go ahead and give it a shot themselves. And don't forget. We've got the experiment.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, I want to say thank you so much for having me. And it has been a pleasure. I mean, the community has been really, really helpful, as well as friendly, as well as, being passionate. Like I love doing what I do because of people like you guys being passionate, and loving what you guys do. And it makes me feel validated.
Oh, you should feel validated based on so much of what you've done. But it's changing, it's transforming people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what the thrill
and that was one of the main thing why I went into the industry instead of staying in academia. When I finished my PhD, I told myself I could stay in the lab and do research and go for professorship or whatever. But what I want to do is really, oh, you got the numbers. 1.0, as you said earlier, from 0.5.
Yep. 1.0 on the ketones. And let's take a look here. We're going to do that blood sugar as well.
'82 from
82.
From 92, was it?
Yeah. So you know what? We didn't touch on that. I'd like for you to hit that real quick as well.
Okay.
The exogenous ketones, some of the benefits, the one that we seem to have missed, it definitely elevates your level of ketosis, but it also does what to your blood sugar?
It lowers your blood sugar. It has been shown in studies across the board using any exogenous ketones, especially if you have a significant increase in blood ketone levels, you will decrease your blood glucose levels, especially taking after food. So that helps your body to regulate sugar better, so you don't get that huge spike in blood glucose. What we believe is the mechanism of action would be the signaling of the ketones to the liver to decrease gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is a process where your body creates glucose for non-carbohydrate sources. So our body does that perpetually, and it just basically dials down gluconeogenesis, and therefore you have less blood sugar circulating around because your body is saying, I've got this preferred fuel. There is no need for me to create any extra sugar anymore, at least for the amount of time that I need, that I have ketones in my blood.
Got it. All right, Latt. Thank you so much. I'm going to send you backstage. Hang out there real quick for me. I'll wrap up this show.
All right.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with me today. What a thrill it's been to have Latt on the show. We talked about a lot of really deep stuff, a lot of very scientific stuff. If you have any questions or concerns, again, please don't hesitate to message me at the show. I can go ahead and translate some of that stuff for you. But like I said, I am super excited about this partnership between Ideal Protein and Ketone IQ. I think the best is yet to come, and we're going to find out how best to help each other in the future here. So as always, subscribe, follow the show. Please share the show with other people that you think might be interested in the show. I will be coming at you with some more really great episodes soon. So as always, like I like to say, keep pursuing your life possible.